Welcome to Supercool, the show about real-world climate solutions that cut carbon, boost the bottom line, and improve modern life. Each week on Supercool, we go behind the headlines to pinpoint the stories and data, accelerating the low-carbon economy in towns and cities across the U.S. and around the globe. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. Stay up to date on Supercool by subscribing or following us wherever you're listening, and please leave us a review. And if you want more Supercool, subscribe to our weekly newsletter that expands on the topics we cover here on the podcast. Find details at getsuper.cool/newsletter. This is our 35th episode. Reflecting on what we've covered so far, I'm filled with admiration and awe for the incredible leaders, business people, and policymakers working across so many fields and industries to accelerate the low-carbon future. We've heard from true visionaries like Lynn Mueller, who in his 60s decided that instead of playing hockey the rest of his retirement, he was going to figure out how to capture all the wasted heat flowing through city sewers and recycle it as a zero-carbon energy source to heat and cool buildings across North America. His company is called Shark Energy, and we spoke to Lynn in episode 2. We also spoke with Amy Upton, whose architecture firm designed Hollibird and Graceland, 2 kindergarten through 8th grade public schools in inner city Baltimore that now rank among the most advanced net zero energy schools in the world. It wasn't just the solar panels on the roof, the geothermal wells beneath the ball fields, or the high performance building envelope that inspired us. It was the playbook Amy implemented as project manager to bring together a diverse coalition of designers, engineers, city leaders, community members, faculty, staff, and parents over the course of many years to bring those schools to life. Now, attendance and student performance are up, while detention and absenteeism are down. These buildings aren't just good for the planet, they've transformed an entire community. You can listen to the conversation with Amy on episode 8. We also spoke with Sam Ramadori, a former private equity exec who walked away from a cushy career after one conversation with Jean-Simon Venn, the inventor behind the technology powering BrainBox AI, one of the fastest growing startups in real estate. BrainBox pioneered a way to use AI to drastically reduce the carbon and energy footprint of HVAC systems, the heating, cooling, and ventilation systems inside large commercial buildings. Sam told us how after being shown the future, he had no choice but to go home and explain to his wife why a finance and operations guy with zero AI or tech experience was quitting his job to run an AI company. 15,000 buildings later, BrainBox AI was acquired by Train Technologies earlier this year to keep scaling up its platform. You can hear from Sam on episode 29. Which brings us to today's guest, Reuben Petty, Principal Digital Sales Engineer at Johnson Controls, a company that's been shaping how we live and work indoors for nearly a century and a half. Johnson Controls practically invented modern air conditioning back in the 1800s. Since then, it's grown into a global powerhouse in building systems and infrastructure, with a footprint that touches everything from schools to skyscrapers, stadiums to hospitals. Now the company is reinventing itself again, not just as a provider of hardware and HVAC systems, but as a digital force helping cities, campuses, and companies hit their climate goals. Their platform, OpenBlue, uses AI, data, and automation to optimize how buildings operate, cutting emissions, boosting performance, and saving serious money along the way. Reuben's job sits right at the intersection of legacy and innovation. He helps clients connect the dots between the systems they've already got and the future they want to build, using OpenBlue to turn buildings into active players in the low-carbon transition. A few weeks back, Reuben gave us a demo of the platform, and as soon as we saw it, we knew we had to have him on the show. In this episode, we talk about how AI and digital tools are transforming commercial real estate, why HVAC has become one of the most important climate frontiers, and how a 140-year-old company keeps finding new ways to lead. Here's our conversation. Ruben, welcome to Supercool.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really glad we had a chance to connect, and we've been doing a lot of work on this show, a lot of interviews, really delving into the future of buildings. I feel like we're in this new era of an appreciation for energy efficiency, the stepchild of decarbonization that people are like, nah, like let's go build, so let's go figure out something new that we don't want to do this energy efficiency stuff. Meanwhile, energy efficiency is just so interesting right now. There's so much innovation taking place. We've seen it from a startup level, and now we get a chance to talk to you and hear about Johnson Controls, a company that basically invented air conditioning. You go back 40 years, and now your company is pushing so hard and so fast into this generative AI digital evolution of buildings. And so let's start there. Tell us a little bit about you, the role you play, and then we'll talk a little bit about Johnson Controls and dive into OpenBlue and this amazing tech.
It's really amazing we talk about Johnson Controls. It roots back to 1885. They invented the first thermostat. And you're right, they basically invented air conditioning. So myself, I'm a data sales engineer. I work directly with the customers. But what I'm basically focused on right now is some of our more modern focus at Johnson Controls. We are a global leader in smart building technologies, and we're focusing on providing services for facilities, digital solutions for building efficiency, which is huge. Safety is big as well. And my number one thing is sustainability. They've been doing this for quite some time, but now we have a program called OpenBlue, which is really spearheading this revolution in technology for eco solutions. There's a hurdle to get over in the beginning, but we make it a little more simple so you can have dashboards and to understand what your building's doing, how it's doing, and how to improve it.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about OpenBlue, the topics you write about. You're an awesome LinkedIn follow because you do provide this broader context. You wrote this article about, if you look at the ancient civilizations, there were technologies to cool buildings, to heat buildings, what we'd consider maybe more passive design, but like really interesting ways to bring in cool air and funnel it down into the spaces that people occupy, but thinking a lot about comfort. And what struck me doing Supercool is when you think about why do we have global warming? Why do we have climate change? Now, you can take that in a whole bunch of different directions, but like, what do we use energy for? Right? So much of the energy, like in a mind-boggling amount of energy, is simply for heating and cooling, and ventilating our spaces around the world. It's crazy how much of it. And I think there was some stat, and you probably know better than me, but that buildings are responsible for, ask a different expert, you get a different answer, like roughly 40% of energy consumption.
That's accurate. And that's why we really have to focus on net zero energy and carbon reduction, because that's where you can easily make an impact. You're absolutely right. It's about 30 to 40%. So we're talking about embodied carbon and renewable energy management and integration. But really what it comes down to is the life cycle assessment, just understanding the environmental impact of a building from the entire life through its technology.
Yeah. And so when you think about that, 30 to 40%, and then you take a look at HVAC, which is something like half the energy that buildings use. So then you say, okay, wait a second. So just getting comfortable in a space is like 15 to 20% of all the energy in the world is used for this. Now, it makes sense. We want to be comfortable. That's modern civilization. So along comes Johnson Controls during the Industrial Revolution and says, hey, we've got some modern techniques that are going to heat and cool homes or heat and cool commercial buildings in this instance. Create a lot of hardware, a lot of systems. And now in the 21st century, you're building on that to move into this digital space.
So OpenBlue is pretty simple. It's a program that allows you to basically connect to any third-party systems as well as Metasys BAS, which is our internal building automation system from Johnson Controls. And you have it all hosted on the cloud, which means that you're able to see all the inputs. We can bring in stuff like access controls. We can bring in lighting. We can bring in weather data. And it's able to tell you some of the efficiency issues. You can look at the asset performance that you have. You can look at faults and issues that are happening there, indoor air quality, water efficiency, and management. It really is endless. It's about how you use it. It's a large amount of microservices that you can put together in order to basically be able to speak to your building. And now we've improved it by Microsoft Azure and being partner of the year last year with Microsoft to develop generative AI. So we can make recommendations for you to make actionable items, do actual things with it. And that's huge right now. There was once a time where you'd have this 80-year-old man who could walk through the hallways of your building and just hear something and know exactly what's wrong. Okay, that's done. That's over.
For sure. So what led to you and I speaking is our team had found you and reached out. You walked us through a demo of the platform. And it was just jaw-dropping to us. When you're talking about these capabilities, really what we're talking about is Johnson Controls, 100,000 employees, global presence. We're talking about having this layer of intelligence in an airport, in a hospital, in a stadium. We had mentioned like Fiserv, where the Milwaukee Bucks are. And by the way, which is cool because I was watching that little case study and Peter Fagan, who's the president, was in there. I was like, oh, I went to summer camp with that guy.
There you
So
go.
I
Yeah,
was
that's right.
particularly excited about that one. So I think probably the best way to bring this to life is to talk about some case studies. The World Cup used Johnson Controls as this smart layer to be able to, out of one control room, and it's amazing. I'll post to some links so people can go see it, with just like these massive screens looking at controlling temperature, evaluating security across 8 stadiums, 8 live venues in
Yes.
real time, right? With this intelligence that's now coming from Johnson Controls. So you see that and you're like, oh my God, I am really like looking at the future. And that's why I say this energy efficiency thing, or just this data layer of what it can do, it's really remarkable. So maybe
Yeah.
as a way to, do you want to respond to that?
Johnson Controls has so much experience in designing and implementing technology solutions for stadiums, for these kind of solutions. We've done Chase Center, home of the Golden State Warriors, done Fiserv Stadium, and obviously with the World Cup. I mean, what you saw was the control center. It's really a cool thing. It was a partnership with a company called Intellect. And basically, we were able to pull in all of their controls, all of their information, and create a digital twin. So the whole idea of a digital twin is it's something that you can throw different scenarios at, and it doesn't control the actual stadium until you want it to. You can send different responses to it and change different building attributes. But the real benefit here is real-time visibility. I mean, it's safer, it's more efficient. We're looking to implement these technologies in not just stadiums, but also college campuses. So we do a lot of college campuses. Safety and access control is huge. If you have a control center just like that inside of your security office, there's a lot more people that can benefit from this.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is that there's all of these, like you said, these different components that can come together. And so there's this element of sustainability in terms of energy efficiency, but also reporting, really surfacing data, utilities and energy rates in real time to coordinate what goes on in a building. There's this layer, which we'll talk about in terms of how that then translates also into indoor comfort. Then there are these pieces around security, and you're talking about a college campus. Why would a college campus be interested in this OpenBlue platform? What are they looking to accomplish? Like, hey, we want to do XYZ, can you help us? Or is there some dynamic where it's also you coming in or your team coming in like, you may not have realized that you can do XYZ, but we've got a tool that we want to show you. So what is that dynamic like when you approach a college campus to start working together?
A lot of these college campuses are thinking first about net zero. That's huge. You can't manage what you don't measure. So we're giving you the tools to be able to measure something. Post-COVID, big opportunity in indoor air quality. It's very important. We should have always thought about it. And when it comes to things like indoor air quality, a lot of school campuses didn't have those sensors already there in the hallways, in the bathrooms. So coupling that along with the energy efficiency piece for Net Zero Advisor and greenhouse gases, we can actually make a comparison and show relationship between them. So for instance, if I'm using more energy, it's because maybe my HVAC system or air handling unit is on in a wing of a building that no one is in. How can I tell no one's in there? Well, a quality sensor could tell me there's no one there. So I can then turn off that air handling unit. And then there are grants that are being given for solar panels, for different types of water efficiency and management as well. One of the biggest things we see at hospitals and schools, if you're not metering your water, you only find out that you have a leak when you get your bill. And that's way too late because it can destroy important infrastructure. So coupling all these things together, these are solutions that we show to these college campuses, and then we go a little bit deeper because there are additional microservices. And if they call us in just for the Net Zero Advisor piece, we start talking about the energy and asset and management. We go into indoor air quality. And then really what it comes down to is they have a full holistic system. So we might come in for one thing, but it's a great idea to just kind of understand all the different pieces.
So for a college campus, the driver might be, we have goals to get toward net zero. We have stakeholders that want us to do that. Kids looking at colleges now are evaluating what is the sustainability of the campus, with recruiting professors, with donors. It's just part of the culture now and the expectation that college campuses are good. So you have an administration that says, okay, we've got to figure this out. We trust Johnson Controls. You guys have been around forever. The facilities folks know we have some systems in the building. Let's go talk to them. You guys show up. We've developed some tools to help you with net zero tracking. But let's talk about some other things that you may want to do. And then, by the way, if we do monitoring, we can tie that into a system that can now give you more control over your energy consumption in a smarter way.
For instance, if you have solar panels, we can get that metering information. We can pull that in. We can look at how much you're saving, and we can actually track your goals. So this is the biggest issue when customers or when people in general are looking at the metric tons of CO2 they're pushing out there, and they're looking for certain goals for policies and regulations. There's no way that they can make sure that they're on track. It's such a simple thing, and that math can be done for you. So you can see if you're on track or not.
In order to be able to measure and know whether you're progressing, I mean, you have to establish a baseline.
Correct.
So weave all these buildings of a campus together. And again, I find that really interesting. The idea of this technology that can then see the whole campus. So it's not just one building.
That's correct.
So we can see your whole campus. And so talk to me about the AI component, because I think you mentioned briefly you can bring in weather data. I think you can bring in utility data and utility costs. So how does this AI layer move what Johnson Controls is doing into this very exciting energy efficiency future that's different than where we were even 5-10 years ago?
It really works based on asset management. So if you have a apartment building and you have 700 different pieces of equipment, all those pieces of equipment have a way to be tracked and monitored. So we're pulling all those in as data points. Each one of those pieces of equipment might have 4 data points or 25 data points. So we're basically just pulling all that in and mapping them. So let's say, for instance, your boiler is shutting down and starting back up on its own. That would be a fault, and we'd be able to see how often that happens, the mean time between failures, and actually the fault monetization. How much is that costing you? You can also place a work order on that fault and right from that information be able to scale that. Now, those data points are so important when it comes to the observations and recommendations, because what it's tuned for is saving you money and energy. Those are the specific things that we are looking for. So when you open up observations and recommendations, it might say, this boiler is shutting down and shutting back on from this time to that time. And the recommendation might be, you have to replace something, you have to fix something. And as that data comes in more and more, it's teaching itself, it's learning, it's generative. So it's going to get smarter every time you use it.
At least I'm being pinged like, hey, you got an issue over in the library in the basement.
Yes.
Right? There's a boiler that's like not doing what it's supposed to, that otherwise might be invisible to you as the facility manager for a very long time before it goes really wrong.
From there, the opportunities are endless. It's just it takes some time to understand how to use it.
So who's another type of customer, like a big customer?
Recently, we were working with a very prestigious Ivy League university, University of Pennsylvania, especially the hospital itself. They came to us to do the regular net zero advisor stuff, which is where we're pulling data from the utility provider, we're monitoring the meters, and we're giving them greenhouse gas emission information, energy usage, and also bill usage, so we could put the bills all in one place. After realizing that they had all these different operating rooms and pharmacies and things that are within their hospital system, there's something called temperature, pressure, and humidity, TPH. It's very important because it has to do with even medical malpractice. You need to make sure that the doors are not being opened and closed all the time for operating rooms. It's paramount. Now, there are monitors already for this. There's just not one place to see them all. So the way that these nurses or nurse stations have to roll around, they have to check things off and look at it every day. Just the simple ability to connect all those sensors to the BAS system and then through OpenBlue completely changed the game for them. I mean, they don't have to spend hours a day just doing something so simple. And also, if there is some sort of malpractice issue, they can just print out a sheet and see what time, what day, if something passed or failed. So something simple as that, I'd say it's a revolutionary thing at Johnson. And it's not just hospitals. We're talking about food and beverage manufacturing facilities. We're talking about even things like within trucks, mobile. When you're running a large company or a large university or anything that has multiple locations, the hardest part is gathering data and putting it in one place.
Did you immediately know that there were these use cases that you were going to find around like, hey, we can do this for operating rooms, pull this dashboard together in one place to really help with your compliance and save tons of time for your staff,
Sure.
keep you compliant?
The great thing is Johnson Controls has a big footprint with construction and controls. So they're already a customer of Johnson Controls. They were interested in the net zero advisor piece, which is pulling in information from the utility bills and the meters for sustainability measures, greenhouse gas emissions. And in talking about that, I kind of did what I'm doing with you guys. I'm talking about a little bit more that can be done. And they indicated that they did have a use case and they had an RFP out there and we were picked. Now, it hasn't been completely implemented yet, but hopefully by April it should be in. We have a great relationship with them and They're great partners of ours for decades.
Cool. So one of the other things that I was reading about, which also strikes me as interesting, is I mentioned Fiserv, I mentioned the Milwaukee Bucks, and when I was looking at that, the commentary from the Milwaukee Bucks side was Johnson Controls was a great partner right from the beginning as we were planning this building.
Yes.
And by being there in the beginning and integrating in the beginning, we could really develop this holistic strategy of what we wanted to accomplish together. So that's one use case. The other use case that is maybe even more compelling, listening to another client, I think it's a big commercial real estate firm in London, who was saying, we have this physical footprint already. We have these buildings. We have people who have leases with us, and we have a mandate to go net zero quickly. Johnson Controls and their OpenBlue technology was able to come in, connect to the systems we already had in place.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And immediately start to show us what's going on in our buildings so that we can cut energy, better control our HVAC systems, and start to create a more comfortable environment, but without us having to buy new physical systems.
It's called OpenBlue, blue because of Johnson Controls, open because, not because it's open source, but because it works with all third-party systems. So what we do is we have a BAS system. Any BAS system could be Schneider Electric, Honeywell, it could be Siemens. That's fine. All the controllers for a building all go to that BAS system. So
what is a BAS system?
The BAS is building automation system. It's basically like the CPU of a building or a facility. It's the brain, it's the computer. BACnet technology, BACnet IP, is the interface protocol that's used just like an Ethernet cable would be for a computer. We can connect to that and we can suck that data and give the customer what they want, right? So many times we have a system in place, maybe 15 different BAS systems between 60 hospitals across the country. So we did a huge deal with a large hospital system. They had 90 locations. Well, those were bought and sold by different people at different times and different BAS systems, different contracts. But we can connect to every single one of them. And that's what we're doing here. We're trying to make it easier for the customer. There's no reason to have to buy all brand new equipment. And you'll hear that from a lot of the competitors. But the truth of the matter is, if we want to get to net zero as fast as possible, it's not going to help the customer by having to buy a bunch of new stuff. Okay, and it's going to only make it harder for them to get interested. I mean, you got to navigate the green maze, as I call it. Getting your feet wet to begin with is very expensive. We don't want it to be expensive. We want it to be simple.
That seems to me, I would say, very forward-looking, forward-thinking, strategic decision made within Johnson Controls. Says we're going to design this digital layer, this brain, so to speak, OpenBlue that can go in, it can connect into any system, it can work with anybody's equipment. So we're not coming in to say hey, we want to sell you this, but you also got to go buy our Johnson Controls HVAC system to run it. Right? To the degree that you can speak to it, does that create tension internally? Everyone's cool with that? It just makes a lot of business sense?
Yeah, well, so I'll tell you, there isn't much of a competitive stage for this type of technology to be agnostic this way. Usually Siemens works with Siemens, Schneider works with Schneider. So yeah, it can definitely create some issues. The truth of the matter is the customer, right? We need to ensure that that's the way it is. Years ago, I worked for an automated packaging machine facility. It was the same kind of idea. They had 15, 20 different machine manufacturers, but the customer just wants to see them all in one pane of glass.
And is the selling point to the customer, we'll put this in place, and you're going to see energy savings over time?
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
You're going to see carbon reduction of it. What's the value proposition to the customer?
So there's always an ROI. This is a yearly recurring costing product. Really what we're selling them is peace of mind. We're selling them the ability to control their devices in one place. We're giving them insight into the four walls of their operations. Customers themselves do see an understanding of why they need it to begin with. We're simply positioning to them, and they often are the ones telling us how important it's going to be to them. I mean, one of the first things I ask is, who are going to be the first people to use this system? What are the goals you're trying to get? Because we can work and position things towards those goals. Everything's possible, especially if we have the information. I mean, smart building technology has been around for a while. So we're not the first people ever in this industry to talk about these types of topics. So it is important to have a 30, 60, 90 checkup with the customer to make sure that they're using it correctly. We also make sure that we don't leave them, we don't just land a 747, give them the keys and walk away. We make sure that we have constant training and information. We have service managers that speak to them on a regular basis. We want to make sure that transitioning this information and system for them really contribute to a safe, comfortable, and efficient environment. So we want to be the reason why that happens.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting strategic move for a large global public company with this long history to say, you know what, we're living in this different time now. We're a quarter way through the 21st century. We're going to make some different moves here to go compete. Like you said, the notion of smart building has been around for a while, but the notion saying like, hey, you know what, we're going to create this like really intelligent layer to give people more control over how they manage their building from us, regardless of whether they have our competitors' equipment or not.
Correct. And I'll tell you,
that's awesome to me. That's so cool.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about it from another direction, right? When these companies are implementing this kind of technology previously, there's the rip and replace model, right? Which means, okay, we want to work with this. We have to rip out all this other stuff and replace with this other stuff. So it makes it so that those customers that have that company, they're kind of stuck with them, right? And then they're not really too happy about what they have and this and the other thing. It makes it hard for them to transition. Now, if you have something that works with everything, it doesn't matter what vendor you're using for XYZ other things in the future. You just know that it will always work. And that's how you create a customer for life.
Yeah, so that does make sense to me. This system, regardless of whether we swap out the lighting or we swap out the HVAC or we go get whatever, the system itself can plug into whatever you want to bring in to your building. Right. This system's still going to work. I can see how that creates a lot of stickiness and a customer for life. And I'm sure you all have a roadmap of other things that
absolutely.
that OpenBlue can do as the future continues to unfold. In terms of building the platform itself, now you mentioned a lot of the smart technology has been around for a while, but implementing generative AI, that is a relatively new phenomenon, and really implementing it and giving it a real kind of business case, like this is actually going to be used. Does Johnson Controls develop this internally? Have you acquired companies? Where's that technology?
So I can't talk too much towards it, but I can tell you, being partner of the year for Microsoft of last year and going to probably be this year as well, and our connection with Azure, it's obvious to understand that Microsoft, the Copilot, is in the background here. So this is not something that we necessarily built, it's something that we train. The great thing about that is we have some of the best people in the world that are the programmers for it, Microsoft folks, and we're able to get this data, get answers and questions answered very quickly because we don't have to put the manpower together. Now, OpenBlue has made a lot of investments in a lot of different technologies for our customers, including cybersecurity and things behind space utilization. So we have been making all these different things, bringing in our products to our customers. But when it comes to some of the technology stuff, if you notice a lot of these generative AIs that are out there that are made specifically for one product, they're not very good. They just want to be able to say they have AI, and they're not AI. They're if this, then that. We're not doing that. We're giving our customers the full opportunity to actually use AI, to have AI help them with their building. So that's really what our focus is.
One of the case studies I saw working with Microsoft in Beijing at one of the centers there where a lot of these Johnson Control technologies are actually being worked on and deployed in this giant like Microsoft center. So it's a global business. You have global partners. But that's the thing, Ruben, why I was also excited to be able to get a chance to talk to you is, like I said, we've talked to some awesome startups that have built some sick technology. Like we had Brainbox AI on.
I know them very well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure you do. So you would think like, okay, AI, that's a startup game, right? That's like this new, like, right? At first it's a head scratcher, and then you start seeing how forward thinking the product is, OpenBlue, and how your clients are, what they're able to get out of it from a stalwart company that's been around since the 1800s.
Sure.
Right? That's now like on. So that's why I think like, there's something different about that, because if I'm a university or if I'm a hospital or if I'm an airport and I have mission critical systems, it's not just about, are my tenants going to be comfortable, which is incredibly important for a business. But when you're in these key national infrastructure, someone say, who am I going to turn to like make sure that the systems here are operating? Yeah, and we're talking about the decarbonization, sustainability piece, but there's also the security piece.
Absolutely.
There are all these other elements, right? Like some peace of mind in saying, okay, I'm going to turn to a company that we already work with, and we get all these capabilities of generative AI, and we're going to get all these learnings. There's something very compelling about that.
Absolutely. It's really a key competency of Microsoft, obviously, for the generative AI piece, and it's a key competency for us to understand efficiency in buildings. So it's great to kind of merge those two things together, as well as we have great Power BI reporting. We have the ability to make custom reports for anything that you need, as well as, like you mentioned before, with colleges, universities, students choosing what colleges they go to based on efficiency. We have something called Green Hub that can show the building statistics, just like when you check into a Hilton hotel, and it tells you how many swimming pools you saved. So it's all these different pieces, but you really need some sort of technology provider. Previous to Johnson, I was working in the ETL field, so extract, transform, and load. So I worked for Click and Informatica and these kind of companies that were making data ready for data scientists. Being brought into Johnson Controls was no mistake. This is where we're going. We're trying to understand and ready people's data, make it better for data scientists, bring it down to using Kafka or using something like Snowflake in order to interpret this data, make it data ready. We need to extract that data, we need to transform that data and load it into a way that we can use it.
So what do you love most about your job?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I happen to be very lucky to have such a great team. To be honest, we help each other every single day. But really what it comes down is the customers. I love to be able to solve challenges for customers and show them different ways to do things, create those partnerships, create friendships from it. That's number one for me. But number two is my team. I'll put the number two for this one.
That's fantastic. And one of the things that I'm curious to get your take that we've seen also just now doing 30 some odd shows around this idea of climate solutions. And when you really talk about the climate solutions that can cut carbon, in my view, at scale, okay, we're talking about the physical, the built environment, there's no instance where really it's a go it alone situation.
No.
It's like you need partners. And what we've seen is like you have to build the coalition, not just of the willing, but the coalition of like the highly energized and engaged and want to bring their best work, right? Whether you're doing building a net zero school or trying to get, bike lanes built in a city where there's normally tons of resistance to that, whatever infrastructure thing you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. And you have to sustain that enthusiasm for a pretty long time. These aren't just like week-long projects like you're talking about. Does that resonate with you? Is that something you see as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, projects can be 5-6 years. And also, you got to understand when it comes to building automation, which is really what I'm involved in, they call it Division 25. What that refers to is what part in the process of building a skyscraper, let's say, or building a stadium, what point do you come in? Building Division 1 is putting down the foundation. This is much further down the line. So we have to be involved from the beginning and understand that, and things are being designed that way. But we're not the end all, and we're not the beginning. So it could be 4 years in that we actually get brought into this thing, or it could be a retrofit, which is much more common today because we're addressing things like indoor air quality that we can add on. But it's a long process. It's a long sales cycle. The truth about it is you end up becoming good friends, almost family with a lot of these people because you spend all these moments with them, all these hours working on RFPs. It's really important.
Well, Ruben, I just want to say, one, thank you for coming on and spending some time giving us insight into what Johnson Controls is doing to build the future. It's very exciting. We're excited to follow along as you all progress.
Thank you very much, Josh. Really do appreciate everything today.